Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some people.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 15th of May 2021, we look at Casualty, 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 with the view being that with the clear undermining and erosion of the rule of law in St Vincent and the Grenadines, the casualties continue to mount up, thus leaving Vincentians everywhere with the inevitable question, what or who is the next casualty? The Collins Dictionary states that a casualty of a particular event or situation is a person or thing that has suffered badly as a result of that event or situation. And the Oxford Dictionary states that casualty is a person or thing badly affected by an event or situation. Those definitions tell us that a person or thing that is a casualty is one that suffers badly because of what was done to that thing or person. A person or thing that is a casualty is one that is badly affected by what has happened to that person or thing. A casualty is a victim of a situation. A casualty is someone or something that has suffered loss and or damage. In light of those definitions, we on A View from the Outside assert that the number of casualties under the ULP regime in St Vincent and the Grenadines keeps mounting up with great frequency and regularity. And because of that, many people, even supporters of the regime itself, are concerned and wondering who or what is the next victim, who or what is the next casualty. Earlier this week, on Tuesday the 11th of May 2021, there was a demonstration on the street of Kingstown in St Vincent and the Grenadines, immediately outside of the House of Assembly or Parliament, while Parliament was in session. The event leading up to the demonstrators being on the street allegedly involved a man being beaten, threatened and shot in the leg by two high-ranking government officials in St Vincent and the Grenadines. The alleged incident occurred whilst the man, Mr. Cornelius John of Diamond, was on his own property. One of the officials allegedly involved in the said incident is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, Ashel Morgan. The demonstrators were on the street demanding, among other things, that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Assembly, a government senator, a lawyer, Miss Ashel Morgan, steps down while a criminal investigation in which she is allegedly implicated takes its course. It ought not to be missed that Mr. John was allegedly shot in his leg with a gun by one official, and another official allegedly with another gun threatened to shoot him in the mouth if he dared call the name of that official. The police are accused of being slow to act in the matter because more than a month has now passed and no one has been arrested. The question that is being asked is whether the entire criminal justice process has become a casualty of the regime, especially in the face of many unsolved gun crimes in the country. In that regard, one cannot forget the killing of Glenn Jackson. He is often hailed for his role in helping the regime into power, and he ended up a casualty. He was described in WikiLeaks as, and I quote, among Gonsalves' closest confidants, attending all cabinet meetings and weighing in on important policy issues. Glenn Jackson's brutal killing still remains unsolved more than 15 years after his naked, lifeless body was found in his vehicle on the 6th of March 2006 with a single gunshot wound to his chest. The shooting death of a lawyer, Bertram Bolo Stapleton, also remains unsolved almost 13 years after he was gunned down on his way to his office on the morning of the 23rd of July 2008. There are many other unsolved gun crimes which have occurred in the country, leading to the observation that criminal investigation and the criminal justice process in St Vincent and the Grenadines has become a casualty of the regime. Whilst the demonstrators were on the street making their demand for the Deputy Speaker to step down, a similar demand was being made inside of the Parliament by the leader of the opposition, the Honourable Dr. Godwin Friday and his team. During that session, whilst the leader of the opposition was in the process of making his request, he was expelled from the House by the Speaker of the House for him having the good sense and decency to request that, in the circumstances, the Deputy Speaker steps down while the purported investigation into the alleged incident is being carried out. What transpired in the House on that day has led to the general belief that decency, morality, and standards in public life has each become a casualty of the regime. It has also shown that the essence of democracy and democracy itself is also a casualty of the regime. Many would say, and rightly so, that what transpired in Parliament served to amplify the damage done to democracy in St Vincent and the Grenadines. Many would say, and rightly so, that democracy has long been a casualty of the ULP regime. Many point to various other incidents to exemplify the fact that democracy is indeed a casualty of the regime. These include the incident in 2011 when the then Speaker of the said Parliament flexed his proverbial muscles and ordered that the opposition parliamentarians were thrown out of the House and tossed down the steps of Parliament. An incident in which the Honourable Daniel Cummings, the Member of Parliament for West Kingstown, is still battling life-threatening injuries. There is also the incident in the said Parliament when the opposition was prevented by the Speaker of the House, another Speaker, from bringing a motion of no confidence against the government. A decision which has been described as the worst in any constitutional democracy in the world. A decision which in effect ruled that the opposition in St Vincent and the Grenadines is prevented from ever bringing a motion of no confidence against the government. People, no doubt, the world over, will always remember the sordid way those events unfolded. It is ironic that democracy is being butchered in the very place where democracy is meant to thrive. That is, in Parliament. There are many other things and people over the years that have become casualties of the regime. Time does not permit us to list them all here. However, we will highlight some of them and then leave you, the listener, to identify, discuss, and debate others which you know about and which are probably more personal to you, in that you felt the pain and probably still feel the pain of the damage done. The demonstration last Tuesday also revealed two other things, which over time has each become a casualty of the regime. The first being the seeming unregulated behavior of the police and their show of force during that peaceful event. Such behavior clearly showed why the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, PACE, was abolished by the regime from the law books in St Vincent and the Grenadines. That piece of legislation was introduced in the first place to regulate the behavior of the police, especially during an investigation. During last Tuesday's event, the behavior of the police and their show of force demonstrated why PACE became a casualty of the regime. Many have concluded that the police in St Vincent and the Grenadines, rather than protecting and serving every Vincentian, are operating as if they are there only to protect and serve those in the echelons of the ruling regime and their acolytes. The second thing revealed as a casualty of the regime is justice. This was aptly evident by the words on one of the placards, which simply read, and I quote, "Where is justice?" unquote. It has long been said that justice in St Vincent and the Grenadines has at least two faces, and that there is one measure of justice for members of the ULP family and another for others. ULP family being a term used by the head of the regime to describe those who are closely connected to the political party. So justice, in the experience of many in the country, is in short supply and no doubt is a casualty of the regime. It has been said that the Constitution of St Vincent and the Grenadines, the supreme law of the land, is fast becoming a casualty of the regime. So much so that the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal found it remarkable that the regime is using the Constitution as a sword to batter the citizens of the country into submission. Bigger Biggs will always be mentioned as a casualty of the regime. His multi-million-dollar business, as everyone knows by now, was spitefully, deliberately, and callously shut down and left in ruins by the regime. Former Commissioner of Police Randall Toussaint, now deceased, became a casualty of the regime. He fought the regime and won in the courts, only for the regime to deny him, even up until his death, the compensation which the court ordered them to pay him for his property which they seized. Marcus de Freitas remains a casualty more than a decade and a half after his business was shut down and his property compulsorily acquired by the regime. He is still without payment after promises to pay for his property despite an order of the court. Simone Murray and her husband Dr. Wayne Murray and their family are casualties of the regime when their land was compulsorily acquired, reportedly without any meaningful discussion with them. There are many other landowners, including some from Argyll, who are casualties of the regime and who still remain unpaid for their land, which was taken from them to construct the airport at Argyll. Many public servants, by virtue of being denied promotion, are casualties of the regime. Public servants took the regime to court and won on the very issue of being denied promotion. Yet many still languish without any meaningful remedy. Otto Sam became a casualty of the regime when he dared to demonstrate by showing that his support for the regime did not tie him to be loyal to them forever. Many say that Mr. Jocelyn, who was known as the servant of the Lord, became a casualty. He was a fierce critic of the regime. He disappeared without a trace, and to date, there has been no report that any official investigation or search was ever conducted to find him. Many say that Edgar Cruikshank, known to have been one of the most ardent supporters of the regime, became a casualty literally when he dared to vouch his support for a candidate of the opposition and attended a political meeting by the opposition where he was mowed down and killed. Yogi Farrell remains a casualty. She faced the wrath of the regime, its enablers and agents, as well as the establishment itself. She was carted off to the mental health institution where she was remanded, reportedly without any medical evidence presented to the magistrates at the time. That treatment of her came after she was charged for allegedly using indecent language on Karen Duncan Gonsalves, the wife of Camilo Gonsalves, the current Minister of Finance and the son of the Prime Minister. Healthcare is a casualty of the regime. Medication and medical supplies are in constant short supply. Healthcare remains substandard for the majority of Vincentians, while those in the upper echelons of the regime and the well-connected fly out at will to seek the services of the best surgeons and medical treatment money can buy. One cannot forget that the poor in St Vincent and the Grenadines have also become casualties of the regime. The Prime Minister himself, the head of the regime, was forced to acknowledge recently, conveniently or otherwise, that there is extreme poverty in the country, something which he denied just months earlier when his regime failed to reveal the conclusion of the poverty assessment which was done in the country. The electoral process has become a casualty, especially where vote buying and treating have become the order of the day during elections. Transparency is a casualty. Accountability is a casualty. Freedom of association is a casualty. Independence and the right to work without political interference is a casualty. Not remaining silent, speaking up when cruelty and injustice are meted out to fellow citizens has become a casualty. As said earlier, we'll now leave you, the listener, to identify, discuss, and debate the things which you know are now casualties of the regime. Identify each casualty one by one and discuss them with your family, friends, and neighbors. And as you do that, we here on A View from the Outside encourage you to ponder the words of the Vietnamese American author Thi Bui, who in her award-winning book entitled The Best We Can Do said, and I quote, "Every casualty is someone's grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, brother, sister, child, lover." Until next week, Justin and all the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page at A View from the Outside. And we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Justin, you and the listeners have a pleasant Saturday, a wonderful Sunday, and a productive week ahead. All the best to you.